If you're looking for a gimbal that can handle medium to large smartphones, you don't have many options. There is a lot of garbage out there, but if you're looking for a good gimbal that behaves as a gimbal is supposed to behave, your options are very limited. So if you're still undecided as to which gimbal to go, this video might just be it. So what you need to look for in a gimbal to justify buying it? Well, it all boils down to restriction of movement. You want to make sure that you choose a gimbal that has no restriction in movement at all. Now the Zhiyun Smooth 5 and the Feiyutech G6 Max, they're two very capable gimbals. The Smooth 5 is the new kid in the block, the G6 Max has been around for over a year now. Both can handle large phones, no restriction in movement whatsoever. They do more or less the same thing, but they do it in a different way. So I'm gonna give you a comparison between these two, and hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have a better understanding as to which one is the best option for you to buy that suits your filming style. So first thing to talk about is the mounting mechanism, and they both mount the phones in a very different way, okay? So this is the Smooth 5, and you get this spring-loaded clamp, which it's easy to open up, but mounting a phone can be a bit of a pain. You need a little bit of practice, but really it's not rocket science, okay? And you can switch from vertical to horizontal mode very easily, okay? Now the only downside of this mechanism is that it's touching right up against the motors, so forget about using external audio unless you slide the phone out and then put the cable and then back down, which really is not ideal, okay? And removing it is really not that difficult. The Feiyutech G6 Max, on the other hand, it mounts in a very different way. You get this clamp, and then you just literally slide the phone, okay? And then you just lock it there, and it's secure. And it's also right up against the motors. However, because of the way the gimbal is designed, you could literally mount the phone upside down and then mount any accessories, lens, filters on here. You're not gonna have any issues touching the motors, and then you can use external audio without any problem, okay? So you have two different options to mount the phone. The Smooth 5 is a better option for vertical filming, but in my opinion, this setup is much better and secure. Balancing these two gimbals is relatively easy and quick. Both of them have markings on the bars, so you can easily set them up in no time. And you more often than not, you're gonna be using the same phone and maybe a couple of different variations in terms of payload and accessories. So it's very easy to remember exactly where you need to have the gimbal in relation to the payload. Both of these gimbals give you unrestricted movement, so you can pretty much do any movement you can think of with either the Smooth 5 or the G6 Max. The only thing you need to be fully aware of is the payload and the accessories that you may be able to use. So for instance, if you want to use a heavy phone like the 13 Pro Max with a lens and a filter, you have to make sure that you use a very lightweight case. If on the other hand you want to use more rugged cases that you can easily mount whatever lens and filter and potentially an extra accessory, you're gonna have to go with the G6 Max for the simple fact that the payload that it can handle is vastly superior to the Smooth 5. But in terms of the range of movement that you can do with either one of them, you have no problem there. Both of them will give you the same results as long as you stay within the payload that they can handle. Both of these gimbals give you the same modes, even though they might call them differently, but essentially they are follow, tilt lock, FPV or point of view, full lock, and inception or vortex. They're very easy to dial in. Both of them allow you to change them on the gimbal itself, so you don't have to go on the app. The Smooth 5 gives you a little strip that you can cycle through the different modes. You can either go forward or backwards. The G6 Max, you have a little LCD screen and then just one button that you either press once, twice or 3 times. Which one is easier? Really, I mean, we're talking about a fraction of a second or a second, so it's really easy to use with whatever third-party app that you have. Now, as you can imagine, these two gimbals behave very similar in terms of steadiness or smoothness. And I could be talking here in fine detail about how this gimbal does this or that, but the best thing is to just show you now a few examples and then you can decide. Both of these gimbals allow you to do fine-tuning or manual adjustments. The Smooth 5 has a joystick that you can do panning and tilting, and it's really well implemented. And when you set it to slow, it genuinely goes to slow. I am really impressed with this. It can go also a medium speed or fast motion, but the slow is really nice and slow. And the jog wheel, that is a trademark of the Smooth range of gimbals. You can do zooming and focusing in the Kami app, which is fantastic. And it will eventually be on a third-party app like Filmic Pro. Whether it's useful or not, that's open to debate. The G6 Max also has a joystick that you can do panning and tilting. It's not as well implemented as the Smooth 5. When you set it to slow, it's not as slow as you would want it to be. But the jog wheel is where things are really interesting, because you can use the jog wheel specifically for panning or tilting or roll adjustment. That is really well implemented by G6 Max. Personally, I hardly ever use the joystick, so it doesn't really have much value to me. But the jog wheel, because of where ergonomically you place the hand, is really nice and easy to move with the thumb. So I think the G6 Max in that regard, despite the fact that the implementation is maybe not as good as the Smooth 5, but the use of the wheel is much better with the G6 Max in my opinion. The Smooth 5 is in my opinion well ahead of the G6 Max, and this is when the joystick comes into play in my opinion, because you can set 5 points in the Smooth 5 using the Kami app, but the time-lapse you're very much restricted to using it with the Kami app. The G6 Max only allows you 2 points. You can do this also on the gimbal itself, which is an advantage of the G6 Max over the Smooth 5. You can set your start and end point for time-lapse on the gimbal itself and then use Filmic Pro as the app to record the time-lapse. Plus, because you can set the in and out points on the gimbal itself and you don't need to rely on the Feiyutech app, you could technically use the Filmic Pro app to record yourself. So for instance, a panning movement or a tilting if you're coming down the stairs, you can record yourself, which is something that you can't do with the Smooth 5. So I don't know. Personally, I think the G6 Max wins for me because I prefer the functionality and the quality that you get from the Filmic Pro app, but someone else might feel that they need to have the much more accurate control that you get with the joystick. Entirely up to you. Both of these gimbals allow you to lock the motors, which is fantastic, and you'd be surprised how many gimbals They didn't do it up until recently. I think the G6 Max was one of the first gimbals that allowed you to do that, and obviously everybody now is copying that. Now, not all locks are the same. And in the Smooth 5, you get a switch at the back that locks the roll axis, and then you got two other locks that you basically click. I just don't feel the lock at the bottom is strong enough. It feels very plasticky and low quality. The locks on the G6 Max, on the other hand, are really strong and sturdy. You can feel the quality. Although the one at the roll section at the bottom, it still comes off every now and then. You know, bottom line is that they both have locks and they work. You know, we could go into fine details as to the material. Who cares? It's just that we get lost sometimes in translation. I don't even know if I should be doing a section about this. This is where things get interesting, okay? Because they both can handle very different payloads. Now, in terms of battery life, I don't really need to do a section for it. They both more or less run around 8 or 9 hours when you fully load it. That's more than enough for a whole day. There really is no need to do a section about this, okay? Now, in terms of payload, that's where things start to get really interesting because they differ quite significantly, okay? The Smooth 5 has a payload, a maximum payload of 380 grams. And this really is the maximum payload. A few grams give and take, okay? It's advertised as 310, so the fact that you go up to 380 means that you're right up the limit, okay? I would not try to do anything over 380 grams, and that includes the phone, case, and if you use a lens or a filter, anything that you mount on the gimbal cannot go over 380 grams. The beauty of it is that you can use it either vertical or horizontal. That's an advantage of the Smooth 5, okay? But do not go over 380 grams. If you think that your filming style requires a higher payload than 380 grams, if you put your phone, case, lens, whatever lens you use, because they all have different weights, filters, you need to calculate that. And if you go over 380 grams, the Smooth 5 is not for you, okay? It doesn't matter whether you like it, whether you think this is a great feature, that it's not gonna work for you. The G6 Max, on the other hand, has a payload of 1.2 kilos, okay? That's more than enough for whatever smartphone and whatever accessories, for the simple reason that it's also designed for small compact cameras or mirrorless cameras. Now, the beauty of the G6 Max as well is the fact that you can mount the phone upright or upside down, depending on the weight of the accessories and the payload. Because if you mount the phone upright with heavy case, lens and filter, it might be too top heavy and balancing might be a bit of a problem. But if you mount it upside down, because of the way the gimbal is designed, you don't have any problem seeing parts of the motors or hitting the motors. The ergonomics are very well designed. I think in that regard, the G6 Max obliterates the Smooth 5. As you can see, this is entirely up to you and your shooting style, and nobody else but you can decide whether one gimbal is better than the other. This is where the Smooth 5 obliterates the G6 Max, because Feiyutech's camera app, in my opinion, is an absolute embarrassment. The Cami app, without being perfect, but is miles ahead, and it behaves like a camera is supposed to behave. As a matter of fact, it reminds me so much of the DJI Mimo app. I many times wonder who on earth designed the Feiyutech app. You know, they would be better off designing a backend app for just adjustments and then let people use the gimbal with a third-party app like Filmic Pro, ProTake, or whatever flavor of the month there is. Because the beauty of the G6 Max is that you can do everything and anything on the gimbal itself, and you don't really need the app, okay? You don't even need the app for the time lapses. I wonder, I don't think I have ever used the Feiyutech app, just to give you an idea. The question you need to ask yourself is, will you ever use any of these apps over a third-party app like Filmic Pro, ProTake, or whatever floats your boat? Because personally, I don't care about the app. As long as I can do the settings and use Filmic Pro, which is what I use, I'm totally fine. So again, another one that only you can answer. The user experience that you get with these two gimbals is very different. With the Smooth 5, you genuinely feel that you need to use the Kami app to take advantage of the gimbal itself, because every move that you do with the jog wheel or the joystick or every button that you press has a correlation with something in the app itself. With the G6 Max, on the other hand, everything can be done within the gimbal itself using the LCD screen. You can adjust the motors, you can adjust the modes, you can adjust the settings for the jog wheel, you can adjust the speed of the joystick. Everything can be done within the gimbal itself on the LCD screen. And to me, that's a much better user experience. And yes, if you use those gimmicky features that come with the app, the Smooth 5 is miles ahead. And if you use time lapses, it's easier in a way to set up with the Smooth 5 because you can use the joystick and get it exactly where you want it to be. And with the G6 Max, doing it manually really is not ideal. But ultimately, once you press the record button, all that matters is the result. And with the G6 Max, for instance, in Timlapses, using Feiyutech Pro, it's a fantastic setup. But if you're looking at integration between a gimbal and an app, the Zhiyun Smooth 5, it's the gimbal that you need to buy, okay? If you're the type of person that want to use Feiyutech Pro as your main camera app, and you want a gimbal that you can adjust everything manually within the gimbal itself without pretty much ever needing to go to the app, then the G6 Max is your gimbal. So which gimbal is better than the other one then? Well, it depends on you and your filming style. There is no better gimbal than the other one. I have my priorities because of the way I film and what I use with my smartphone, but you might be totally different. If you are a person that wants something quick and easy, that you're only going to be using the smartphone and maybe one accessory like a filter, the Smooth 5 is a really good gimbal. It will last you for years. It can take on more weight than Zhiyun advertises, and you'll be very happy for years to come, okay? If, on the other hand, you're the kind of person that uses a range of different accessories and that one day you could be using a case and the other one a different case, and you could be using a heavy anamorphic lens or maybe stacking filters, or worse, for instance, you could be using a large filter with a clip-on mount, and those add weight. So if you are the kind of person that don't want to be limited by a certain payload, the G6 Max is the way to go. It's 1.2 kilos. You are never going to max that out in terms of smartphones, okay? It gives you more functionality that you could possibly ever think of, no restriction of movement whatsoever, and you can use Feiyutech Pro for anything and everything. You can do the same thing with the Smooth 5, but again, it very much depends on you and your filming style. But look, if you want to get some inspiration on what shots you can do with either one of these gimbals, apart from the traditional gimbal shots, I've got a video appearing just about here, where I give you 10 cool shots to do with a gimbal and a phone. If, on the other hand, you're looking at something a bit more basic as to how to shoot cinematic content on a smartphone, I've got another video appearing just about here, where I go through everything that you need. And with that being said, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if that's the case, and I'll see you in the next video.